All right, so 4.6, we're going to learn a new type of factoring. So we're continuing with what we've been doing, but today we're going to be factoring by completing the squares. This is a special type of factoring. So the first couple examples just bring us back to solving an equation. So we have to solve, so we have to get x all by itself. What do I need to do to get x all by itself? Subtract 10 first. So I have 4x squared is equal to 36. Divide by 4. So x squared is equal to 9. What's the opposite of squared? How do I get rid of that squared on the x? So the opposite of squared is the square root. So I would take the square root of both sides. So that gets rid of the squared there. So I have x is equal to, anytime you take the square root of both sides, you need plus or minus.
So it would be
And what's the square root of 9? 3. So it would be plus or minus 3.
So you always have to write plus negative?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Because it's two different answers. You have the positive 3 and the negative 3. So when you take the square root of both sides, you need the plus or minus. All right, B. What should I do first? Add 5. So I have 3x squared is equal to 30. What do I do next? Divide by 3. So what is x squared equal to? 10. Then what should I do? Take the square root of both sides. So the square root and the squared cancel. So I have x is equal to what?
Plus negative 5. Oh.
It's just the square root of 10 because we can't simplify that. We don't have two numbers that multiply and give us 10. So it's the plus or minus square root 10. So we're doing the same thing here. What do I need to do to solve for x? Divide by 2. What is 72 divided by 2? 36. What do I do next? Take the square root of both sides, so that cancels. So I have x is equal to plus or minus 6. And the square root of 36 is 6, because 36 is a perfect square. All right, we're doing the same thing here. What should I do first? Divide by 6. So x squared is equal to 9. And then what do I do? Square root it. So what does x equal? Plus or minus 3. So anytime you take the square root of both sides, you need the plus or minus. So here we're completing the square. So you can form a perfect square trinomial by adding this here. So it's b over 2 squared. So this is going to be the formula that we use. B over 2 squared. So here, what value completes the square? So we have x squared minus 10x. In this spot here, we're going to put a value that completes the square. The middle number, so the one that has the just x, the middle number, is our b. So the formula we use is b over 2 squared. So what's our b here? Negative 10. So it would be negative 10 over 2 squared. What's negative 10 divided by 2? 5. And what's, well, negative 5. And what's negative 5 squared? 25. So the value that completes the square is 25. So this is the formula here. So it's,
Is it gonna say like equals 25 or plus?
it'll be, so like the next one has a little space for it, so it'll be like what goes in that space. So like here, it already has the plus sign. So it just like goes in the blank. All right, so we're using our formula. What's our formula? B over 2 squared. What's our b here? Negative 4 is the b. So we have negative 4 over 2 squared. What's negative 4 over 2? Negative 2. What's negative 2 squared? 4. So 4 completes the square. All right, we're doing the same thing here. What's the formula that we use? B over 2 squared. What's our b here? 10. So we have 10 over 2 squared. What's 10 divided by 2? 5. And what's 5 squared? 25. So 25 completes the square. All right, the next one. What's the formula that we use? B over 2 squared. What's our b here? B is 2. So 2 over 2 squared. What's 2 over 2? 1. And what's 1 squared? 1. So 1 completes the square. All right, so we're going to apply the first 2 examples that we did, so solving and completing the square, together into one. So we're going to be solving an equation by completing the square. So the first thing we do is rewrite our equation in this form. So we have all the x's on one side. So notice how all of the x's are over here, and then it's equal to the number. Then we're going to complete the square by adding our little formula, b over 2 squared, to each side of the equation. You have to do it on both sides because you have to keep your equation balanced. Then we factor, our favorite thing to do, and then we take the square root. So this is just each step in words, but it'll kind of make more sense when we do it in examples. So we have 4 examples of doing these. All right, so remember, step 1 is to get all of the x's on one side. So what do I have to move? The 4. So I want to subtract 4 on both sides. So I have x squared plus 4x equals, what's 25 minus 4? 21. And I'm going to leave a space here because I'm going to complete the square. So the number that I complete the square goes into that space. All right, so what's my formula to complete the square? B over 2 squared. What's my b here? 4. So I have 4 over 2 squared. Yes?
It's the 4 as in 4x.
Yeah, the number in front of the x is your b. So what's 4 divided by 2? 2. And what's 2 squared? 4. So 4 helps me complete the square. It's a positive 4. I just pulled this number out of nowhere. I plugged it into my equation. It was not there before. So since I'm adding 4 on the left side, I also have to add 4 on the right side too, just to keep my equation balanced. So since I'm adding 4 here, I have to add 4 on the right side. Kind of, yeah. It just so happens here that they use 4 a lot. All right, so the point of completing the square is so we have a perfect square binomial here. So it's going to be 2 parentheses squared. What goes into those parentheses is whatever's squared here and whatever's squared here. So the x and the 2. So it'll be x plus 2. So think about it, like these parentheses are squared, so you take what's squared and put them inside. And then this is equal to, what's 21 plus 4? 25. Now we want to solve for x. So we're not done yet. This is like, we completed the square, so we got our equation set up. That's step 1. Now to solve for x, if we have something that's squared, how do we get rid of that squared? What did we do in the first examples? Take the square root. So we take the square root of both sides, and that cancels out. So I'm just left with x plus 2. And what's x plus 2 equal? What do you need when you take the square root of both sides? Plus or minus. And what's the square root of 25? 5. So x plus 2 is equal to positive 5. And x plus 2 is equal to negative 5. Then from here, we just solve for x. So x plus 2 is equal to 5. How do I solve for x? Minus 2. So x is equal to 3. And do the same thing in the other one, minus 2. So what's negative 5 minus 2? Negative 7. So x is equal to 3 and x is equal to negative 7. Those are our 2 answers. Oops. I need to rewrite it. And what do I need on one side? All the x's, and then I need all the numbers on the other. So how do I move the 5 to the other side? Subtract 5. So what's 3 minus 5? Negative 2. All right, so in the blank here is what's going to complete the square. What's the formula that I use to complete the square? B over 2 squared. What's B?
B is 12.
B is 12. So 12 over 2 squared. What's 12 divided by 2? 6. So 6 squared. And what's 6 squared?
2. 3.
What's 6 squared? 36. 6 times 6. 6 times 6. So if I'm adding 36 on the left side, I have to add 36 on the right side also. So if I add these two together, I get 34. And then I need my parentheses squared. What's going to go inside my parentheses? X and 6. Awesome. So it'll be x plus 6. It's always whatever this sign in the middle here is. So x plus 6 squared is equal to 34. Now we solve. So how do I get rid of that squared? Square root it. So it cancels out with the squared. So I have x plus 6. X plus 6 is equal to what? Plus or minus square root of 34. 34 is not a perfect square, so we just leave it like that. Not yet. I need x all by itself to be done. So what do I have to do to move that plus 6 to the other side? Subtract 6. So x is equal to negative 6 plus or minus square root 34. You can't add these two together because one of them is a square root, so you just leave your answer like this. So we can't combine. All right, so for the next one, what do I have to do first? Subtract 9. So I want to rewrite it with my x's on one side, I'm going to leave a space for what completes the square, and it's equal to, what's 1 minus 9? Negative 8. What goes in the blank here? What's the little formula? B over 2 squared. And what's B? So 6 over 2 squared. Six over 2 is what? 3. So 3 squared. And what's 3 squared? So I'm adding 9. Yeah, this one just so happens to be the same original equation too, but it's fine. And we have to add 9 to the other side too. So what's negative 8 plus 9? 1. And in my parentheses squared, what goes inside the parentheses? X plus 3. Awesome. All right, what do I do next? Square root it. So we have x plus 3 equals, what's the square root of 1? Just 1? Plus or minus 1. Because remember, when you take the square root of both sides, you need the plus or minus. So we have x plus 3 is equal to positive 1, and x plus 3 is equal to negative 1. What do I do next to solve? Subtract 3. So what's 1 minus 3? Negative 2. Do the same thing with the other one. Subtract 3. What's negative 1 minus 3?
Negative 4.
Negative 4. What do I need to do first? Subtract 2. So I have x squared plus 4x. I'm going to leave a space to complete the square is equal to negative 2. What's the formula that I use to complete the square? B over 2 squared. And what's b? 4. Remember, it's what's in front of the x. So b is 4. So 4 over 2 squared. What's 4 divided by 2? So 2 squared. And what's 2 squared? So I'm adding 4 here. What else do I need to do? I have to add 4 to the other side also. So don't forget. If I add 4 to the left side, I have to add 4 to the right side also. Now I can write my parentheses. What goes inside the parentheses? X plus 2. Perfect. So x plus 2 squared equals 2. What do I do next to solve? Square root. So it cancels. So x plus 2 is equal to?
Plus or minus.
Plus or minus. Plus or minus what?
2. 1.
Just square root of 2. Because 2 is not a perfect square. We don't have two numbers that multiply to give us 2, so we just leave it like that. What do I do next? Subtract 2. So I have x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus square root 2. That's the answer. So remember, we cannot combine these. And as a little refresher, some examples of perfect squares would be like 1. So if we take the square root of 1, what's that? 1. What's the square root of 4? The square root of 9. Square root of 16. Square root of 25. Square root of 36. And square root of 49. 7. So these are perfect squares. We can take the square root of these numbers, but anything else, we just leave it as a square root. What's the square root of 100? 10. Remember, 10 times 10 is 100.